Why is it not focused on me? So I recently made a video, like the other day. I know, surprise, point back-to-back videos, never happens. But I wanted to talk specifically about the fact that I criticized these students. And I still stand by everything I said in that video. If you want to go check it out, it'll be in the description or maybe even at the end of this video, or just check out just look at the channel. It's literally the video before this one. But I wanted to point out, even though I'm criticizing them, as I said in the video, there's a lot more to it. I'm not just criticizing them, I'm more so criticizing the narrative that this is something inherently revolutionary. I don't believe that it is, and I still stand by everything I said, of course. But my criticisms came from a place of wanting this to be something. Other people in the world are not so positive about the fact that students are protesting, that students are doing violence. Commencements have started to happen, or graduations from universities. And some protesters have taken this as an opportunity to get everyone in one spot and protest there. Recently, at the University of Michigan, students got into the center of the stadium and started protesting, holding up Palestinian flags. Now, I have no problem with this. It's just a graduation, right? It's just a ceremony. It doesn't mean that much. It doesn't mean the same amount as people being murdered senselessly in Gaza. So these students doing this, even though it might be a disruption, it's one with real foundations, one that is just, one that should be done. In fact, a commencement is nothing. It means nothing. This little blip in your life of something so fantastic, finishing college, means nothing when people aren't even able to live past their early adolescence, live past their childhood, their infancy in a country far away. So when these Palestinian protesters, when these pro-Palestinian protesters got into the center of the stadium and started protesting, of course, chuds had to get up and start chanting USA. They had to scream at these protesters that they're un-American. They had to call them anti-Semitic because they have nothing. They're just upset that their precious little ceremony is being ruined. In fact, they even said that. You're ruining graduation.
Ruining our graduation.
Who gives a shit about your stupid fucking graduation? In this other place far away from you that you can pretend isn't there, they're never going to see a fucking graduation. Some people genuinely cannot even imagine that they are in a privileged position. They can't even think about it. They can't even consider for a moment that what people are doing in this stadium, in this Michigan stadium, protesting what's happening in Gaza, these chuds can't even see that as something good because it's affecting them in a negative way, because they had this idealized university graduation. They idealize the Zionist state. And so when people get in the way of that, when people might challenge their privilege, it really festers something inside of them. They don't have their privilege checked at all. They don't have it checked when they support Zionism. They don't have it checked when they get to graduate college, when they come from a nice suburban family. They don't have their privilege checked when they all together someone that comes to their fraternity. They don't ever get their privilege checked. Instead, they just take and they take and they take. They do that until they're in their late fucking age, about to die, hoarding everything they can from the rest of us while they tell us that we're not doing enough, or that we did something wrong and therefore we deserve the position we're in. These people are not our friends. And when they yell at us, when they counter-protest our protest, it should not just be a moment of ignorance. It's a moment of power that they're enacting over us. They have authority. The straight white men chanting USA do not understand the first thing about disenfranchisement. They don't know the first thing about not being able to live into your teens. They don't know fucking anything except for taking and taking and taking. They've had cushy lives, they're going to continue to have cushy lives, and they're never going to know the fucking difference. These types of people are the problem, and they become people worse than we can imagine. These men are our future. Not our as in the revolution, not our as in the people, but our future as in the future leaders, the future business owners of America. Business owners like the Shark Tank people. And I bring the Shark Tank people up because specifically one of the members of Shark Tank, one of the judges, if you will, has recently gone on CNN to talk about these student protests. And of course, I knew it was going to be bad, but it was worse than I thought. He didn't just come on and do apologia for Zionism or Israel. Instead, he came on to tell students that this is permanent, that what they're doing is permanent. He essentially made the case that AI and cameras will keep track of those people forever. Everything you do now, caught on camera with your eyes showing, will have you put into a permanent database that would keep him forever from ever hiring you as a worker. He says, and I quote, "There are hundreds of thousands of people competing for great jobs.
And the minute you put yourself in this precarious position where you're filmed in AI, 4K, 1080p, for the rest of your life, you're tainted."
When he does this, he is taunting and flaunting his power. He is showing you that there are certain people in this country which have power over you and your future. So you need to think hard about your future if you're going to continue and fight for what you see as just. If you're going to enact violence in the name of something just, if you're going to enact not strict non-violence in the name of something just, because I don't even know if it's fair to call what these students are doing violence. Graffiti, breaking windows, and lighting things on fire is not violence. There's no one being harmed when those things are done. Whatever Joe Biden wants to fucking say.
Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest.
If it isn't peaceful protest, then I don't know what else to fucking call it, because it's surely not fucking violent. Violence is what I would very much... Never mind. Never mind. So as Biden has established, this is not peaceful protest. And as this business owner from Shark Tank has established, this non-peaceful protesting will get your future ruined. But have you ever fucking considered that maybe we're not here to appeal to the President of the United States? Maybe we're not here to appeal to the business owners of America. Have you ever considered that our analysis and our understanding of what is going on is greater than just a genocide? Has that ever crossed your mind? Have you ever for a second considered that maybe we don't just have a problem with the genocide? Because if that was strictly the only problem that we had, if we had no further analysis, then it probably would stay pretty peaceful. We could do candlelight vigils and pray that something happens and Gaza is saved. But we understand more than that. Students are not completely fucking ignorant. Students are not toddlers being taught everything piece by piece. We're not just learning how to fucking count. People understand, students understand that there is something greater going on, that there is a system, a paradigm going on. And even though I have my critiques on how easily this student protest movement is going to abolish that paradigm, shift that paradigm, regardless of that, this is a paradigm, and they understand that. And this is not unlike the 60s. This Shark Tank fucker, this fish fucker, wants to pretend he knows that stuff like this has been going on for decades. It's been going on since the 60s and since before then. But you employ the name of the 60s. You use the name of the 60s for your own gain. You have no idea, you fish fucking bastard, what the 60s were about. Even if you were fucking alive then, you have no fucking clue. You haven't read what these people wrote. You don't know what these activists were for. In fact, the people who took over Hamilton Hall at Columbia back in the 60s even wrote a paper about what they were doing it for. And it was not just because of Vietnam. It was not for any simple reason. It wasn't any one-note fucking liberal ass advocation. It wasn't that. This was people wanting revolution. It's the same reason why today the Brown Divest Coalition calls themselves a student revolution, because these students are not ignorant. They understand there's a system that's being upheld and perpetuated to cause these atrocities in the Middle East, in Gaza, all over the world, even at home. We understand there's something going on. The paper, Columbia Liberated, by the Columbia Strike Coordinating Committee, 1968, reads, "Striking students are responsible to the totality of the conditions of our society, not just one small part of it, the university. We are disgusted with the war, with racism, with being a part of a system over which we have no control, a system which demands gross inequalities of wealth and power. a system which denies personal and social freedom and potential, a system which has to manipulate and repress us in order to exist. The university can only be seen as a cog in this machine, or, more accurately, a factory whose product is knowledge and personnel useful to the functioning of this system. And so when the Shark Tank guy uses the 60s while simultaneously talking about how this is going to affect their futures and their careers, he is doing the exact same thing that the 60s radicals were fighting against in the 60s. And there's more to protesting back then than just being seen on film. He makes the argument that back in the 60s, students were caught on 16 millimeter. There's not much of a way to keep track of a student for the rest of their life when they're caught on 6 millimeter, and that isn't propagated across the entirety of the web. Whereas today, you're caught in AI, 4K, 1080p, and you can be found for the rest of your life. But there was a trade-off, wasn't there? If the popular theory about the 1960s and the anti-Vietnam War movement is correct, and that the main reason a lot of that unrest happened was because of our ability to see the war on our own TV screens, then that applies tenfold to today. And students sure understood that news and media was getting bigger and bigger at that time, which allowed for them to know about what was happening in Vietnam in the first place. And even though that trade-off existed, they still were in the streets. They were still on their campuses. They were still fighting tooth and fucking nail for what they believed was right. And that's happening today. The trade-off, sure, is much larger. We have a much larger, more accurate, more up-to-date system of information on what is happening in Gaza. And it's horrifying what we see in our feeds. But at the same time, as Fishfucker pointed out, we also understand that we could be caught on camera at any moment. There's a big reason that so many protesters today tell people to hide their faces so much. But that's not the problem. The problem isn't our employability. Clearly, like in the 60s, we're fighting against more than just one conflict in the Middle East. We are fighting against a paradigm. We are seeking the destruction of a totality. Plus, I mean, just to nitpick, he's not even right. He's not even correct that these students won't be employable in the future. Jerry Rubin, a celebrity revolutionary in the 60s, and members of the Weather Underground, a group which advocated violence and domestic terrorism against imperialism, both were employable in the future. Jerry Rubin went on Wall Street, and some members of the Weather Underground went on to do trade in Chicago. It doesn't matter. Our employability does not fucking matter. First of all, it's likely that we'll still be employable. Thank you very much. But we don't want to be. Right now, sure, we're in our idealistic youth, but we understand that the system will not be fucking destroyed if all we're concerned about is our fucking futures. Take my future and shove it up your rich fucking ass. You say life is hard and then you die? Well, hopefully we make life a lot fucking harder for you. Go fuck yourself.